Okay, that should take care of that. Shut this guy off.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning, guys.
Morning, kids. I'm moving the iPad over to Cliff's desk. And chilly out there this morning. Mike, nice and warm down there in Florida, I think.
Oh yeah, it'll be 84 today.
Anthony was just asking me about the weather. I said it's only 30 something up here now, so you should dress warm because the high here is only going to be 52.
28 degrees here.
28? It's cold. Wear something warm.
So this should go. Michael?
Yep.
Mike's good.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Dawn Patrol. I'm Cliff Krieger, your host. I'm joined by Eileen Delrossi, my co-host, my Friday co-host, and by Mike Smith down in Florida. We're looking for Fru to show up, and we're hoping to have Superintendent of Schools, Liam Skinner, here at 7 o'clock. And the weather is chilly. It was 27 on my phone when I left the house, going to a high of 53, but, you know, not bad, just chilly. And the other question is, did you remember to set your clocks back when we went from daylight savings to standard time?
I did.
Yeah.
Because
Most things are all automated now, like your phones, your computers, even some the TVs, and a lot of stuff are all automated. They've got it programmed in.
Not
Just
that
the
alarm
main
clock.
box.
The alarm clock, the microwave, the DVR, whatever you want to, the VCR, whatever you want to call it, the recording thing, all little.
Your stove, usually your stove, you got to reset too.
And your car.
True.
And your car is like, how the heck do I do this? Press the brake twice, turn signal once. There's all kinds of codes to change the clock. Crazy stuff.
We'll all survive. And tomorrow's election day, and at least here, early voting has ended. But I guess millions of people voted early. Mike, have you voted already?
I had to because I moved from New York to Florida, so I had to do a absentee ballot.
Eileen, did you vote already?
Eileen's away from the screen right now.
Oh,
I'm here, just getting ready, but no, I have not voted. I'm gonna go tomorrow.
okay. So,
Are we allowed to say, I think I heard on the news that over 50 million people have already voted already?
I heard 70 million.
yes, I think you can say that.
Okay.
But a bunch of people have voted.
Mike brings up a good point. The public access stations, all of them, Drake it, Tewksbury, Lowell, Tingsboro, Chelmsford, you can't talk electoral politics 48 hours before Election Day. This is an old rule. I've been swapping emails with executive directors this week about how silly this rule is, and it's never going to go away, because I hope it would, but we cannot talk electoral politics, so we can't talk about the questions. We're not going to talk about any candidates running for federal up. We can beat up the city councilors, we can beat up the selectmen, we can beat up the school committee, but we can't talk about the presidential, congressional.
Except for Eileen.
Oh, we never beat you up. You're spoiled. Back to you, Cliff. So that's it. We can't talk about electoral politics today. Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay.
Well, we can talk, I think Cliff said though we could talk about the things in Canada though.
Yeah.
Well,
What, John?
what Canucks? What are the Canucks doing? They're making Chevys. What else they doing?
The Prime Minister is facing a lot of opposition. A bunch of his party have gotten together and told him it's time to fish or cut bait. They're
Now,
afraid the
what
next
did they
general...
mean when they said that? What did they mean by that?
What, fish or cut bait?
Yeah, what did they mean?
Is
when
that
they
a new term for you?
Cliff, I'd love to be smart as you, but I'm just not. It's embarrassing sometimes to ask questions. So when you say fish or cut bait, what do you mean by that?
That he either has to say he's stepping down or he's stepping up for the next election, and he's not going to allow be the losses they had in the last election.
Ah, never knew that. See? That's good to know.
But fish or
So
cut
fish
bait...
means you're gonna run,
No,
cut bait means you're gonna
no.
sit back.
Fish or cut bait applies to all sorts of circumstances, saying, do one or the other. Don't just sit there.
So if you're gonna fish, you're gonna run for office. If you're gonna cut bait, you're not gonna run for office.
I don't know. What do you think, Mike?
Well, wait a second, you're the one who brought the term up. Don't pick on poor Mike.
Fish or cut bait means make a decision.
Well, but what does fish mean?
It means nothing.
Oh, boy. Mike, do you have an opinion on this? Since,
Well, I think the term means either you're going to go and try to catch a fish or you're not going to fish anymore, because if you cut the bait off, you can't catch any fish.
okay. Eileen, you
Does that
got,
make sense? Okay?
okay, I can see your angle. Eileen, you got an angle on this?
No, I lost you.
All righty, I don't blame you. Back to you, Cliff.
Okay, back in 1429, during the Burgundian Civil War, Joan of Arc liberates Saint Pierre Le Moutier. So Joan of Arc was out and about in 1429. In 1780, the rebellion of Tupac Amano II against Spanish rule in the viceroyship of Peru begins. There was not just rebellion in the United States, but it was also going on in South America in those days.
Over the weekend, I got to watch Bill O'Reilly talking about the presidents. The 5 worst and the 5 best. And it was amazing. One of the top 5 presidents in his mind is a guy by the name of Polk. President Polk. A one-termer. And he's one of the 5 best presidents of the United States. Now,
Who else did he have?
Cliff, you're the smartest guy in the room. What did Mr. Polk do to be so revered in Bill O'Reilly's mind?
I have no idea.
What? You don't know?
Tell me, Mr. Sarcasm.
Well, you do it to me all the time. Does this mean you don't know what President Polk, you don't know anything about President Polk?
Begins with P.
Okay. President Polk is the one who decided the United States will be from the Atlantic to the Pacific, from sea to shining sea. And O'Reilly showed a picture, and the commentator, I don't remember what the commentator's name was, and he showed a picture of the country where California, Mexico, and a lot of the West was not United States. And he decided, we're going to grab all that land. And he made it happen. So that's what President Polk is famous for. So now everybody knows. Everybody's smarter for knowing what Bill O'Reilly said on TV last night. Thank you for your patience, Cliff.
1952, the United States government establishes the National Security Agency, or NSA, also known as No Such Agency.
Is that the first name for it, or did they claim a name?
That was the first name for it.
Okay. Never knew that. I thought they claimed it from like the the FBI. I thought it was a break off of the FBI.
No, break off of the Army.
So the CIA is a break off of the Army? Or the NSA?
CIA evolves from the Office of Strategic Services, or as it's known, OSO Social. The OSS.
No, it's not to a commoner, Cliff. The commoner, they don't know that stuff. Commoners like myself and Mike and Eileen, she's off there in beautification land.
But we had the OSS in World War II.
Wasn't that a British thing?
No, that was the Special Operating Executive, the SOE.
LMNOP. MOUSE.
Huh?
Don't you know what those mean?
Lucky Strike means fine tobacco.
It
What can I
always does.
say?
Like it always has.
So, the CIA evolved from the Office of Strategic Services. NSA has got a more narrow focus, sort of like GSA, and it evolved from the various services with their listening posts around the world.
What does the NSA do, Cliff?
They listen in on your conversation.
Isn't that illegal?
Not if it's overseas.
So they sit over in England and listen to all our phone calls. Or they sit in Australia and listen to all our phone calls.
Well, actually, in Australia, the Aussies listen to our phone calls and pass it over.
Computers listen to, read every email, read every text, listen to every phone call, no matter the language.
Except if it's Cliff and they're going to be like, I don't even know what he just said, so we're going to abort this conversation. Abort.
Okay. Now the U.S. Space Force, how they doing, Cliff?
They're doing okay.
I have not seen one uniformed U.S. Space Force person yet.
Ah.
Do you know where their headquarters are?
No, and neither do they.
All righty, so it's stagnating. Oh, because Trump invented that, right? Never mind. Sorry, shouldn't say anything about a president.
I think they're still contesting between Colorado Springs, Colorado, and someplace in Alabama.
But see how quickly they learn the speed of government? Brand spanking new outfit. We're the U.S. Space Force, and we're going to move at the speed of government.
I don't think they have much of a choice. It's being hashed out by Congress.
From what I see here, I looked it up, they say it's, their address is in Colorado Springs. So that looks like that's where their headquarters are.
Yeah, but there are people pushing to move them to Birmingham, Alabama.
Is it a post office box, Mike?
They have an actual address, 150 Vandenberg Street, Colorado Springs, Colorado.
150 Vandenberg?
Vandenberg Street.
Okay,
Yeah.
150.
John,
I'll go to
he used to
Google.
live on Andover Street.
Cliff, I'm going to go to Google Maps and check the place out.
Vandover used to live on Andover Street.
Vandenberg did?
Yeah,
I didn't know.
when he was growing up.
I didn't know that.
In 1956, Soviet troops entered Hungary to end the Hungarian Revolution against the Soviet Union, which had started back on the 23rd of October. Thousands are killed, more wounded, and nearly 250,000 leave the country. In 1979, the Iranian hostage crisis begins. Students took over the embassy and took 90 hostages. In 1980, Ronald Reagan is elected 40th president. In 2008, Barack Obama becomes the first person of biracial or African American descent to be elected. That was pretty good. In 1995, Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin is assassinated by an extremist Israeli. Today was the birthday of Will Rogers in 1879. Passed away in 1935 in an aircraft accident with Wiley Post. 1916, Walter Cronkite was born.
All right, Cliff, here we are. This is as close as we can get to this. The U.S. Space Force. Closest we can get there.
Okay.
And what happens is the Google Earth car got turned around here.
Yeah.
And so it's down here on the left. So should you be a member of the U.S. Space Force, you drive down Vandenberg Boulevard in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and you'd show your ID card and you take the first left. It's in here. But now I'm going to try to find a satellite map to see if we have a better look at the place.
Okay.
But it's only
I just want to add in, I looked up, it's interesting. They pay pretty well to be in Space Force. The average annual salary is almost $75,000 a year.
cool.
Not bad.
Yeah, but they said to get into it, according to the testing, usually, this is under the Air Force. It says many enlisted airman careers are available with the ASVAB score with a minimum score around 31, but they said to get into the Space Force, you got to score in the 60s. So you probably know more about that ASVAB score than I do, Cliff. But that's quite interesting. Almost
ASVAB.
double.
Yeah.
Fru's trying to come in here, so we'll see.
In 1916, Ruth Handler was born. American businesswoman. Eileen, do you know what she's famous for?
No, but I'm sure you're going to tell me.
Well,
What do
you're
you got?
awfully sarcastic for
That,
this
that
early
was
in the
good.
morning.
That was good. She's working on beautification. So,
Almost done.
so look at Cliff. Here is the satellite map of the United States Space Force headquarters. And the CIA is probably going to be running through the door in just a second because this should all be blurred. It usually is when you go to the satellite map. And this is the U.S. Space Force building. And there's nobody parked there. Maybe it's a Saturday, but over here, this scantily clad parking lot over here with a few cars. for the Air Force Base. This is the U.S. Northern Command is right here. Do you know what they are, Cliff?
They're the air defense of Canada and the United States.
And then we have the U.S. Space and Missile Defense people over here. They're not working today. What the hell kind of thing is this? I mean, it's Pearl Harbor happening all over again. They must have did this on Saturday. Here we are, the U.S. Space Force. There's a few cars in their parking lot. U.S. Northern Command. There's no cars in their parking lot. And the U.S. Space and Missile Defense, no cars in their parking lot. What day of the week is that okay?
They're up in Cheyenne Mountain.
You think that if Cheyenne Mountain, do they have a parking lot we can look at? I bet you it's empty.
I'm sure that there's cars in Cheyenne Mountain.
We did not learn from Pearl Harbor. But at any rate, this is the U.S. Space Force current headquarters, and you think they're going to move to Alabama.
I think it's possible they'll move to Alabama.
This is a pretty swanky place. Look at this. That's a nice looking building. Just these three structures, Larry, Curly, and Moe.
By the way,
Yeah.
this strikes me as more geospatial administration than it does CIA.
What the heck are you talking about, Cliff? Geospatial?
Yeah,
Here's the Dairy Queen.
out in St. Louis.
Don't know anything about that, Cliff.
Oh,
All righty, so there's room for growth here. Room for growth. Look at all this room they have here. They could have a bunch of other stuff over here. Secret Service could locate to here and everything. And here's a little runway for them. Back to you, Cliff. You're going to say good morning to Fru?
Door is incredibly secure.
Hello,
Good morning,
Fru.
everyone. Even flight attendants can't enter.
So-
Good morning.
1937, Loretta Swit was born. And in 1969, Sean P. Diddy Combs was born. I think he's still in the clink. And in 2011, Andy Rooney passed away.
I used to like Andy Rooney on
Oh,
60.
Andy Reno, 60 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was great.
Irreplaceable. That's like the guy who does the rest of the story. I always like to listen to the rest of the story. About his Dr. Pepper story. Ever hear about Dr. Pepper?
No.
Well, the guy who invented Dr. Pepper, he was chasing a girl romantically whose father owned a drugstore. And he worked at the drugstore. And the father fired him because he had the sweets for his daughter. And the kid went to school, blah, 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 and he invented a very tasty drink. And he named it Dr. Pepper after the mean guy that wouldn't let him chase his daughter. Dr. Pepper was a mean guy. He just defended his daughter.
Did he eventually end up with the girl?
No. Maybe second marriage, but first one, no.
Oh, well.
I'm a little foggy remember the rest of the story, but pretty cool story. So the superintendent's coming at 7, Cliff?
Yeah.
Any good school questions?
Yeah.
Okay, like what? Whoa, look at the frown on his face. Cliff, nobody really cares what happened in 1754. Really, honest to God. Raise your hands. You guys out there in Zoomland, do you care what happened in 1754? Maybe they can't hear me.
They can't hear you. Today's a feast day of Charles
John, did you cut?
Mayo. What?
Did you cut Cliff out of the picture?
No, I was just showing for the. Oh, I'll pin you in there now that get your.
Yeah, I haven't seen him. That's true, Eileen.
It's sort of only partially seen.
See, there's Eileen, all beautified. Look at this. Check this out. There she is. Look at her gorgeous self. All
Yeah,
beautified.
Thank you.
Nice
Thank
job.
you. Thank
Nicely
you.
done.
We need to get a grant for hair and makeup at the studio.
I'll work on that as soon as the presidential campaign's over. Thanks.
This reminds me of that campaign video that I've seen.
Hey, Cliff, do this to your microphone. Swag it a little bit. There you go. Thank you.
Where the candidate is talking and her husband is kibitzing
Yeah.
while she's talking.
Switch with the other one. It's like crackling out. I'm going to change the batteries in it. I just put new batteries in it this morning.
It looks good.
I understand, but sometimes the batteries are...
John, can you focus Cliff's camera so that we see who's talking?
You want Cliff? There's Cliff. You're back on, Cliff.
All right. So,
But
Eileen,
he's still not visible.
stealth. I'm in stealth mode.
Oh, you know what it is? I didn't turn the iPad around. Aha! I'll fix that. I gotta fix this battery anyway. Thanks, Fru.
So, Eileen,
Yeah. Cliff.
what's up with the Karen Reed show?
Oh, so, I don't know if I explained this before, but after the jury was hung in July, then the mother and the brother of John O'Keefe filed a civil lawsuit against her in the bars that they were at, C.F. McCarthy and the Waterfall, which now looking at it wasn't the greatest idea because they all kind of teamed up because nobody ever said she was intoxicated on the witness stand. So then they lost the motion to have, they were trying to get it so she couldn't talk to anybody during the civil case. And now she's able to talk to anybody, and she still does not have to get deposed during the civil case. And they thought that is something that would put the nail in her coffin, or the criminal case, I believe.
I'm gonna see if that's open.
Okay. All right, so the civil case has been kicked down the road so that her Fourth Amendment rights aren't violated, huh?
I think it's the Fifth Amendment,
Fifth
right?
Amendment, okay.
Can I just correct you on a historical amendment?
Yes.
We gotta write that down.
Made my day.
Yeah, well,
Thank you.
if that made your day, I think maybe it's not going to be a good day.
Wow.
The little things. The little thing.
Is that why we are not seeing you? You are hiding?
That's probably true.
Now the miracle of John has happened.
So, up north, some liberals in Justin Trudeau's party want Trudeau to rethink his commitment to stay on as leader, and this has been going on for weeks. The anti-Trudeau MPs have been meeting in secret to convince caucus members to band together and push out Trudeau from the top of the ticket. So, do you got any thoughts on this, Mike?
Yeah, so just a little background on how the Canadian political system works for everyone. In Canada, they do not elect the prime minister for the country, where in the United States we elect a president.
No, we don't.
So in Canada, what they do is whatever party has the majority of all the members of Parliament, they pick their prime minister to represent the country. So what happens is right now the Liberals have the majority with a coalition with the members of Parliament from Quebec. So they're concerned they lost a number of elections, members of Parliament, the last election. And they're concerned that the Conservatives are going to win the majority this time. So they're concerned that because Trudeau is prime minister, that's affecting all the chances of the members of parliament in the Liberal Party getting reelected. So they're pushing for him to maybe step down so that they can put somebody else in that will help them get their members of parliament reelected. So it's just, he's had a lot of issues publicly. I haven't met one Canadian yet that likes him. And all the people I know up in Canada or talked with, or down in Florida that are down here, I have not met one that likes him. So his popularity. Kathy just told me unless you're a French Canadian, because he's from Quebec area, he's French Canadian. So, but I have not met one yet that likes him. So they're concerned. It's all about retaining power in politics. So it's all about, if their members of parliament don't get reelected, they don't have the majority, which means they can't pick the prime minister. So it's, it'll be interesting if he steps down or not.
You mentioned the Quebecois. I mean, that's its own party because they're all French speakers, right?
Yeah, in Quebec, it's the Quebec area. So, yeah. So right now, the reason the Liberals have the majority, they can pick the prime minister is because they've merged. Well, I shouldn't say merged. They've come together to form the majority party to pick the prime minister. Basically, they provide enough votes to add on to the Liberal votes to have a majority on picking the prime minister.
As I recall in my lifetime, maybe this was before Kathy was born, that the French were trying to secede from Canada.
Yeah, but here's the background on that too. They not only wanted to secede, but they then wanted the Canadian government still to provide all the same benefits to them they were already getting, even though they were going to be a separate country. That didn't go over. They wanted their cake and eat it too. So that wasn't going to happen.
Is that always the problem with the French? Wherever the French and the English are, the French are always the problem.
Yes.
If you see in Senegambia, Senegal and Gambia is English speaking small, but Gambia had to separate because the French were not really compromised. They didn't know what they were doing. You see in Cameroon, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the French have their own attitude, I can tell you that. So.
Nice people, but
Their politics sucks.
yeah.
Excuse my language.
Yeah, I guess we both understand that, don't we, Fru?
So I saw somewhere that Canadian Broadcasting Company shows the Conservatives have a 19-point lead over the governing Liberals, which suggests dozens of Liberals could be out of a job in the next election.
Yeah, that's why when you brought up earlier, Cliff, about this with Trudeau, the Trudeau is dragging down the party. His optics, the optics for him, which also is the optics then for the Liberals, is not good. So they're trying to figure out if they put somebody else in there as prime minister, that may help them in the next election.
So, Mike, is Quebecois liberal or what? Or conservative? The Quebecois.
Well, I don't know if they're entirely liberal, but they back Trudeau because he's, French Canadian. He's so.
And why is it that most of the French prime minister have come from Quebec? Chrétien was there. Trudeau's father was there, and so many of them.
Well, Quebec, if you remember, used to be the big business center of Canada. It used to be they used to be the big hub in Canada compared to Toronto and Ontario province. So the falling out, and Quebec's lost some of their power now because what happened is there was a big push. Canada actually has official languages, English and French. And the Quebecs did not want to make English. In Quebec, they still speak mostly French. They only grudgingly will do any English if they have to. So with businesses, English is more of an international language, and they didn't want to do that. So a lot of businesses moved to Toronto and out of Quebec. So they've lost some of their shine and their glow as far as that goes.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Has to have French and English except Quebec.
Oh, Kathy just told me every province has to have everything in French and French and English except for Quebec, and that's where the issue came from. So
That also confirmed in Cameroon, English, in the English side, all the English Cameroon can speak French. But in the French side, even the president cannot even say good morning.
Yeah, not good.
yeah. So I'm waiting sometime when the U.S. has an official language. Because that would cut down on a lot of costs in our federal government. Because how many different languages do they have to put out? Now it's crazy. So I just never understood why we don't have it. Most countries have an official language, and so it cuts down on the cost. It would cut down greatly on the cost for our government if we had an official language.
A politician will be born to push that to a vote.
The ballot that we have in Lowell is 5 legal pages long, and it's 1/3 Spanish and 1/3 Khmer, and then 1/3 in English. So you're right, there'd be some savings if we had one official language.
I mean, every time I buy something in the U.S., the manual is like 40 pages long, but only 3 pages are what pertain to me. They're in English. But then they have about 7 or 8 more languages in there. It would cut down greatly on the cost, I think, for everything if they had one official language.
Well, I think that when you buy something nowadays, Mike, it's made in China, Venezuela, wherever it's made, and they ship it globally. So you're going to find documentation that's printed in certain Chinese dialects. You're going to find it printed in Japanese, German. It's whoever their customers are. The internet.
Yeah, that's a good point, John.
The internet's taken away most of this stuff because if I want to read a manual, I mean, honest to God, you look at the thing and the print is so small. An ant an ant won't cover one letter. That's how small the print is. So I usually go to the internet, find the instructions on the internet, read. My favorite thing is just go to YouTube, and that'll tell you how to hook it up. Back over to Cliff.
So, Fru, over the weekend, you and I were talking about the fact that Africa seems to be going through a second independence movement, a second movement for freedom with the people overthrowing governments that they think don't really reflect their interests, their needs. And that makes some sense to me. How do you feel about it?
Well, Cliff, what I will tell you is we are all endowed by wisdom from God and the brains to think right. So the thing is, if I come to your house, you welcome me, then I have some intelligence or some cunning attitude and kick you and dominate you, and then say, what you own, I own it and I own you. I'm going to give you independence. But for that independence, everything that you have in your house, for you to have control over it, I must give you permission. Would you allow that to happen? Is that independence?
No.
That is what the Europeans did in Africa. They went and signed treaties for 100 years, mostly France. If there is any mineral in Africa, they have to consult France before they can mine it. If there is anything going on in Africa, if France doesn't like it before they can get a customer elsewhere, we are going to print your money. We are going to write your constitution. We are going to do this. You have to live by our own dictates. And then they said they give you independence. And then it was possible, because then the Africans did not study in the West. They were listening to the radio. They were reading newspapers that were really shackling their minds and putting their minds in chain to believe the unbelievable. But now most of the youths today, they have studied in Europe, they have studied in Asia, they have studied everywhere. And they have sat on the same bench with these people who are making politics with them. And some of them have challenged them in their intellectual capacity and outperformed them. So when they go back to Africa, they still see these people coming to control their resources and control their leaders. They said, and even the kind of disrespect in any international forum, you see a black woman or a black person as elected in the World Parliament, they disrespect her until she stands up and says, look, gone are the days of mental shackles. You have to give me the same respect that I give you. So that is why you see in places like Burkina Faso and all these other places, they are kicking countries that do not respect them, that do not respect their territory, as that come there and feel that they can just own the territory. Does that explain to you? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think so. But to move forward, they need to find a way of having democratic governments.
That is very true. When you talk democracy, there's a Western-style democracy and there's an African-style democracy. Before the West went to Africa, if you dig the history, you will see that even in Britain, most of the early kings of Britain were blacks. You go into their archives, they are painted white. Madonna in Italy, or what, they are now unearthing all those things. You go in England now, the Speaker of the Conservative Party is a black woman from Nigeria. There are many councillors and mayors in England from that. How is it that nowadays people can still think that Africans are subhumans? So when you talk of democracy, democracy started there before it went to the West. And that is why the West are rushing to Africa to excavate. Geologists dig and uncover what existed before they came. And they are discovering a lot of wonders.
Comment from the audience. I'm going to pull to the screen here.
Okay.
I wholeheartedly support. I'll shrink it up so you can sit on the screen here a little bit better. I wholeheartedly support Cliff's segments about dates from the past. As Winston Churchill once said, a good knowledge of history is like having a quiver of arrows in a debate.
Very true. But
I understand, Fru.
We want to bring the real history.
I understand, Fru, but let me ask you, history geniuses, this question, okay? What happened in 1854? Can anybody tell me what happened in 1854? We've forgotten all about 1854. You're telling me you don't remember anything that happened in 1850? Now, everybody's looking on their computer what happened in 1854.
Not everybody.
Cliff, my point to you is we overdo it on what happened in 1854. In 54, the year 54, we overdo it. That's my point. We overdo it.
So what happened in 1854, John?
I don't know. A lot of people got married. A lot of babies were born. I I don't know, 1854. I just used that for an excuse, but
That was extracted by you, Will.
extracted by me. Now, you've confused me, Cliff. Sorry. What do you mean by that?
Turn the mics off.
Turn the mics off. Wow.
So, if you said 1856,
No, I didn't.
but
I don't know.
if you had,
I don't want to know what happened in 1856. Really, I don't.
it could be very pertinent. Oh, well, we can't talk about that sort of thing. Yesterday in the Sun, our favorite Sun reporter, Melanie Gilbert, had a go at City Councilor Corey Robinson. Apparently, Corey had been out on social media making fun of the Sun and the Sun's interest in what's going on in the South Common with the homeless.
I didn't see either one of the comments.
And she felt like he'd been sniping at the paper. And of course, he's got this legal case where he's pleading innocent, which is his right, but it's been going on for a year. I mean, that's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's the speed of government.
So anyway, Councilor Robinson took issue with how the Sun talked about the homeless squeezing the residents around the South Common, the people in the housing, the LHA housing. So the LHA Executive Director, Ta Chan, quote, he cites the homeless population at South Common as a contributing factor to the authority's safety and security issues at his property. Oh, and she managed to correct his spelling of the word shoddy.
I would like to speak about this more after 7 o'clock, but since the superintendent's going to be here, I'm going to have to use right now. It's very truthful that the homeless are herded to the South Common by this administration. And it's been told to me publicly, in a public meeting, that they are herded, that's the word that's used, to the South Common. They herd the homeless to the South Common. And so I'm glad that Robinson's going after this issue.
Well, is he going after that problem, or is he just going after Melanie? When's Melanie coming back on?
Friday.
Friday.
I'll double check the calendar, but I think she's Friday. But on the Lowell Sun's end, okay, I didn't read the article. I'll have to make time to read the article today. And I think what he's doing is pretty good. I think the guy that runs the, they used to call it Bishop Markham, then some genius decided, you know what? We're sick of calling it. Never mind history of Lowell. Throw that Bishop Markham name away. And now they call it the South Common Village. And it's very well managed. They do a good job down there. And security at the doors is very good. But no matter what happens, when somebody, and I know a little bit about the doors because when somebody decides to go to heaven, they call us up and we have to go pick them up. The door's held open for you. There are a lot of people sitting by the doorway, and they're very kind people. They live there. They let people in. And so it's nothing I can do, nothing that management can do about people letting other people in the building. How can you prevent people from doing that?
Yeah, it's an issue. So, at the city council, they're going to talk about brushing scams. And this is a little weird to me. you get something delivered to your porch of small value that you didn't order, but the people that are sending it are then going to write a comment about it, saying what a wonderful job it was and what a wonderful thing it is, and they think that the value of that favorable report will exceed the cost of the item. Or they're using your account to order something, and it arrives and it hits your porch, and the scammers pick it up off your porch before you have a chance to retrieve it. So they get it and they charge your account. So this is something to be, we need to be paying attention to as Lowellians. Have you run into anything like that, Fru?
That is evil, Cliff.
Yeah.
The question I would ask is, if they, how would they have access to your account? I mean, there are so many ways that these scammers, I cannot really speak to that because I am not, I don't know how that works. I have always been a victim. So if they can do something like that, and let alone say, if I say I have been a victim, then how more of senior citizens that these people prey on the meager income that they have. So if they can do something about that and to track them and bring them to justice, that would be very good.
I think I get a half a dozen spam calls a day. People trying to sell me medical care that I don't need, that I'm not eligible for, selling me solar panels for my roof, that kind of thing. Yeah, if you call the number back, it refuses to answer. I think that our legislators need to take a better look at this. Lowell has made the senior center available as a warming center as the season goes on. If you're homeless and the weather is cold and bad, and they've opened the senior center, you need to be there by 8 o'clock at night, and I noticed that they said no weapons, so don't take any knives or shivs, any guns. But anyway, the senior center is
Are they
where
gonna frisk me, or are they just gonna trust me?
they're going to frisk you, and they're going to open your bags.
Oh, that's good to know.
So Cliff, when you say you get to be there by 8 o'clock, does that mean that you can be there and spend the night there, or just to warm up and leave?
My understanding is you can spend the night.
Okay, that would be good. Therefore, they will have some security around there too all night.
Yeah. Also, I didn't realize that if you're a 100% disabled military veteran, your motor vehicle tax can be waived. So if you're 100% disabled, you might look into getting your motor vehicle excise tax waived.
So how do you do that, Cliff? Could you tell the public? If you know.
Well, what I'd do is I'd call the veteran rep, whose actually his office is in the senior center, and find out how to do it. Because you have to bring your VA paperwork into the city.
Do you have a lot of luck with the,
Do I what?
do you have a lot of luck with him?
Yeah.
Okay. I get reports of lackluster performance out of the guy, and he's just say, call out to Drake it, call out to Tewksbury, use the veteran people out there. You don't have to use the low guy.
True.
This comes in from John Corrigan. He says, what about spam email and text messages, Cliff? I think what he's talking about is people getting information off you.
I think right now as the election season is coming to the peak, I think I'm getting 50 to 100 a day. I just exchanged yesterday emails with a couple of classmates of mine, and 50 was the agreed number on the number of spam emails we're getting.
Well, since we are talking about these scammers, please, to the public, for those who have WhatsApp, if anyone ever calls you and tells you about a Zoom meeting, knows that you are part of a group, and asks you that they were going to read you a code, they were still going to send you a code, don't read the code back to them, because they will compromise your account. If you are really wise, if you start reading the wrong number, if they say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if you say 1, 4, 5, 6, they will just insult you and run away. They would know that you already know them.
Good to know. Well, I understand these packages that people are talking about that get mailed to your house. There's that little square thing they call a QR code. And it says, for more information, click on this. And when you do that, that QR code tells your phone, give me all of your information. Give me all your emails. Give me all your passwords. So be careful not to do that, because you're commanding your phone to give out all the information to this source. So that's why you should not just zero in on the QR. For more information, nothing comes up. You go, what the heck happened? And all of a sudden, your bank account's gone.
So Tuesday, I thought the city council was not going to have a meeting, but they are. And they're going to vote on sending 8 people to Toronto in Ontario, Canada for a 4-day conference by the Urban Economy Forum, an initiative to provide a forum for professional dialogue between cities and municipalities, banks, and other financial institutions, and private sector professions and non-governmental organizations, NGOs for you, John, to increase the efficiency of urban economy. And the Urban Economy Forum is going to pay transportation and housing. We're going to pay the per diem. So that's going on. City Councilor Wayne Janess has got a request in that have the proper department investigate sidewalks on Prescott Street for tripping hazards and develop a plan to remediate.
Cliff, are they having a meeting this week?
Yes,
Wow.
that's what I said.
I thought they canceled it,
It was up for a vote.
and it must have lost. Good. I'm glad.
Prescott Street is that sort of angled street between Market and Merrimack.
I got an email from a guy, or maybe it was a Facebook message, I forget, prompted me to go to some YouTube or some guy claiming that we should leave the homeless where they are, give them another chance, and all this good stuff. And all I can tell you, over the weekend, we went down to the Keep and had some lunch. No, had some dinner at the Keep.
Yeah,
And I told my wife and my sister-in-law, don't bring your pocketbook, just leave me here. So they did. And we come out of the Keep, and 2 bicycles come out of nowhere. 2 bicycle guys in black outfits come out of nowhere, slowed down, stopped, looked at my wife, looked at my sister-in-law, looking for this. I think, it isn't like they talked to me, looking to grab their pocketbook and keep it going. So when I see the cop later on today, I'm going to ask him, is that going on, or are they grabbing pocketbooks? But went down to the Keep, delicious dinner, and nice drinks. We had a good time. So the Keep's a good place to go. Back to you, Cliff.
Okay.
All right.
We're out of time, so let me introduce City Life Show from LTC. I'm Cliff Krieger, your host. We have fading into the background, Fru Nkimbeng. We have Mike Smith, and Eileen, are you there somewhere?
Eileen is on her way here.
Oh,
I'm going to go check the door because we can't. They're not here yet. Superintendent.
okay. Fru, are you a dot now? Looks like Fru is gone. So, Mike, did Kathy have anything else to say about the Canadian government?
I'll ask her. No, she doesn't have anything else to say right now, so. Today's the first day of our bocce league, so she's making lunch because we have to go over there after the podcast. We'll be there all day. We have 20 teams that are starting the bocce season.
Is bocce Spanish or Italian?
Italian.
Italian. So, can you give us the quick description of a bocce game?
Okay. So, okay. In bocce, there are 4 players on each team. Okay. And it's on a court that there's 2 players from each team at each end of the court. Okay. So you have total of 4 players on each team. 2 are at each end of the court. There's 2 color balls. There's 4 green and 4 red when we play. So each bocce player gets to throw 2 balls. Okay? And there's a small little ball. It's white. It's called a Bellini. The object is to get your team's balls as close as you can to the Bellini, and that's how you score points. So for each ball that's the closest from your team, closer than the other team, you get a point. We play up to a score of 12. And the shooters are alternating when you shoot the balls. So that's pretty much the game summarized shortly. So we have a total of 80 players because there's 20 teams, and then we have 40 subs. So we have about 120 people that are involved with our bocce league.
That's a big operation.
Yeah, it is.
Do they play bocce in Ireland?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of, Cliff.
So,
so it's pretty serious because we have a league champion, and then we have at the end of the season, we also have a tournament where people play. It's a double elimination tournament. And then the teams that win, they have their names and team names up on a plaque in the main clubhouse. So there's a lot of people who compete. They take it pretty seriously. So.
Speak of that, there used to be Highlight down there in Tampa. Do they have Highlight anymore?
I'm not sure if they do. I mean, they also have the dog racetracks down here, but there's less of those now.
Yeah.
I don't even know if they have any anymore. So.
I always thought Highlight was pretty nice. That ball's moving pretty fast. So
yeah. I would think they have that more down, if they have it still down the Miami area.
Yeah.
I think that's where it would be.
So, in my mind, the Fontaine Palace was at the intersection of Dale Mabry and Beta Bay? Could be. I'll have to look it up someday.
Before I forget, Cliff, Kathy asked me the other day, because we didn't write it down, what was the name of that restaurant you wanted us to check out? I just don't want to forget.
Kapok Tree.
What is it? K-Pox?
Kapok. K-A-P-O-C. Kapok Tree.
Okay, thank you.
Sort of in northeast Clearwater.
Yep, okay. Thank you.
So, introduce our guest, Liam Skinner, our superintendent of schools.
Good morning, Cliff.
How are you?
Very well. Morning, John.
Like your tie?
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very old-fashioned, but it's me.
So,
Nice to see you back, Superintendent Skinner, again.
Good to see you, Mike.
so I was going to needle Eileen because it looked like the school committee meeting Wednesday was just secret squirrel stuff, but then Jen Myers sent me the real agenda, so...
Okay. What does secret squirrel stuff mean, Cliff? Your code is...
Executive session.
Oh, no, we have a regular meeting too. Yes, we do.
Who do we get secret squirrel from? A former school committee member?
We got it from Bob Howard because what happens in secret squirrel meetings never makes the meeting, never makes the minutes, because the minutes are correctable. And so that's why it's called secret squirrel, because it's really not a truthful meeting. It's not recorded properly. It is what it is, secret squirrel.
I thought Regina had used the term before Bob Hoey, but maybe not.
So, do you know where secret squirrel comes from, Cliff?
Yeah, it comes from some cartoon.
Secret squirrel, from Bullwinkle J. Moose
Yes,
and Squirrel.
that's true. So, Mr. Superintendent, how are things going in the school?
It's going very well, very well. Folks are working very hard, but the school year's off to a good start, and we're doing very well. We're working on any number of things, but the big picture is that we're working on what we call our culture of continuous improvement. So it's known what the factors are for success in education these days. There's been enough study and research that we can figure out from successful districts and successful schools what are the components of success. And we've been studying them and we're implementing them. There's no quick fix, but you can establish certain dispositions and practices that are going to lead you in the course of continual improvement. And so we're studying those and we're implementing those, and we're making good progress.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned culture because having been in the military and lived overseas a lot, we tended to use the post office box. So when we came to Lowell, we rented a post office box. And my wife had found when we were in Alaska, she was a substitute in 3 different school systems. The one on base, the one in North Pole, Alaska, and the parochial school in downtown Fairbanks. And she saw major differences in discipline between those 3 schools. And she felt that that was an important factor in how the students were performing. That the North Pole was a lot looser. The teachers were not that disciplined in North Pole. When we were there, the big thing was the Great Denali Trespass, and the teachers were all talking about how they were going to participate in the Great Denali Trespass of Mount McKinley in violation of BLM's restrictions on what they could do, BLM being the Bureau of Land Management. So,
Backing up the Wayback Machine here. Some of the texts, we got 3 texts, I'm just going to read them quickly. Open up the giant warehouse on Route 38, the ex-Kmart, put beds and clean facilities, and maybe some outreach program. The shelter is not working. Moving right along. When the downtown area become overrun with vagrants and streets that aren't safe, then you'll get empty buildings, no one going to shop or eat. And there was one about bocce. I don't know what happened to it. Oh, there it is. The most important rule of bocce, you need to have a beer in your hand when hitting the ball. Thank you for your comments. Back to you, Cliff.
is Mike going to make a comment?
We have no alcohol on the court during the matches. Maybe afterwards, when people are hanging around the pool or at the banquet. But we do not have alcohol. Nobody's drinking any alcohol while we're having our bocce matches.
Okay. So,
They take that way too serious to be drinking alcohol.
something my wife commented to me, and I think this was like 15 years ago, but going to the post office, she noted that people who present as Asian Americans, the mothers talk to the children in English. People who probably present as Hispanic talk to the children in Spanish. So she thought that would have an impact on education, the fact that the parents of the Asian Americans were forcing their children to communicate in English versus the Hispanic parents who were still communicating in Spanish. What do the studies say about this? Is this a factor?
I'm really glad you asked what the studies say about it. There's no such research that shows that that's a factor. I can tell you about research and tell you what the factors are, but the fact that parents speak to their children in a different language is not a factor that I'm aware of, or that any studies would encourage us to organize your schools around. The fact that students are bilingual, sometimes in Lowell trilingual, is a positive. It helps their brains develop. It helps them with all sorts of capacities, and it's a positive. So,
But does it cost us because we have to do English as a second language?
so you have many students coming to Lowell that don't speak English, and of course that slows the process. They have to learn English as well as learn their subject matter. So yes, in that sense, of course, it's a factor. Students have to learn English first, yes. That makes the rest of their education, it slows the process for those students.
Liam, the kiddos that we got at the UMass Indian Conference Center, how did they fit in, and did we keep them all in Lowell Public Schools, or did they go to off to charter and?
Right,
Eureka?
well, so if they came, many of the students at the Inn and Conference Center do come to school in Lowell, Lowell Public Schools.
How are they fitting in?
Several of them go to school elsewhere. If they move to the Inn and Conference Center from outside of Lowell, so they did, right? Let's say some of them moved into Lowell from Bedford.
Yep,
They're actually entitled to go to schools in Bedford.
makes sense.
And some of them choose to go to Bedford. But some more and more of them over time are choosing to go to school in Lowell. But they're doing well. They've been very well received by our schools. Fortunately, in our schools, we're accustomed to working with students who speak second languages, right? And we're good at helping those students gain English proficiency. So we've taken them into our schools, and they're doing very well.
Thank you.
Does this relate to the battle hymn, Tiger Mom?
No, we haven't
little bit.
quite gotten to
Good
her.
morning.
So, but I wanted to follow up on that Zero Hedge article that we talked about last week that talked about discipline and how students that pick up discipline do better, and they do better in later life. Is that the way you recall the article, Eileen?
Well, not so much discipline. I think it was centered more around having a good core structure. Like any child who has a disciplined structure usually does better than those students who do not have like a disciplined structure. Would you agree, Cliff?
Yes.
Let me tell you what I think you're referring to in discipline. There's a very famous study where they gave a group of youngsters, I do not know the grade level, but I'm guessing around second or third grade. They gave them a cookie. And they told the students, if you can hold off eating that cookie until recess time, we'll give you another one. And so many students, held off eating the cookie until, I don't know how far away recess time was, and then they got 2 cookies going out to recess. But lots of students couldn't resist the cookie that they'd been given. And so they ate the cookie before it got to recess time. This is about discipline, meaning the students didn't have the self-discipline to stop themselves from eating the first cookie they were given. Studies do show that students who lack that self-discipline do less well than students who have self-discipline. The ones who were able to hold on to their first cookie and wait till recess time are students who tend to do better in schools and in life.
Do we have any ways of teaching that, or is that on the parents?
No, we work on that in schools too. You can imagine, by the way, especially after the pandemic, you know the most difficult grade level in school after the pandemic? Kindergarten. Because you had kids coming to school who didn't have any social skills, and they didn't know what it meant to sit for a couple of minutes and wait for the teacher to find them a book.
Those are our current fifth graders.
Right? And they didn't know how to interact with each other. Students coming into kindergarten with no social skills. So definitely in schools we work on those.
Not even core stability from sitting on the rug.
There you go. Right? They didn't have the physical or the mental capacity to engage in school well.
They
And so-
come in thinking they're at the club.
And so our teachers, yes, they do teach those skills as well.
Yeah. So, I remember almost 2 years ago, Latifah Phillips had a chart at a school committee meeting in which she looked at students, Asian Americans, blacks, Caucasians, Hispanics, and what I call the non-academic indicators of performance: tardiness, truancy, dropout rate. And the Asian American students did the best, black students did the next best, then the Caucasians, and then the Hispanics. And then at the end of the chart, did they go to college, graduate and go to college? Asian Americans did best, Caucasians just edged out the blacks on going to college, and then Hispanics were markedly lower. And so I wonder about, what does this say about home life, expectations being set, and that's sort of my lead-in to the book that Eileen and I read in preparation for this, the Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother. Now,
Well, you two set me up, right? You've read the book and you're putting me in the middle without having given me the material.
I really haven't
oh
read
no,
I read
that's
the
on
whole book.
Jen.
I read like the
'cause-
first
That's
chapter.
on Jen, because I warned her a week ago. And I at least gave her the Wikipedia link.
Well, I didn't see that link. Cliff, let me tell you what's important if that actually happened. There's nothing about students of different color or different races that means that they are, one is more likely to be tardy than another and so forth. What it boils down to, I believe, and you can see it in the data, is poverty.
Socioeconomic
status.
Yeah.
If students are in households that are warm and mommy and daddy are getting along, and they have good jobs, and so there's food on the table, and they have an alarm clock that gets them up on time for school and all of that, and they get a nice ride to school with mommy or daddy, everything's hunky-dory. If you're living in a household with one parent who's struggling, who worked late the night before and has difficulty getting up the next morning, that kid may have difficulty getting to school on time. And that's what makes the difference.
Well, I guess I believe parents set a standard based on my own experience, because I'm not a great student. For my sophomore year in high school, first year in 3-year high school, they gave me a study hall to help me to get my homework done.
Hey, I'm going to grab the screen for a second here. This is a past comment from my friend John Corrigan. He says, gentlemen, I tell you, though, it's very tough because I get slammed with all kinds of that political advertising. That's one thing I do not for security safety. So on that note, we're not talking electoral politics today. All the public access stations that carry our program restrict our talk, cannot talk about electoral politics today. So we're not going to talk about the questions. not going to talk about the president, not going to talk about the congresswoman, not going to talk about anything at all politically today, and that's because we can't, because there's a rule at all the public access stations. 48 hours before voting day, you can't talk electoral politics. Back to you, Cliff.
So, I go to study hall and I do my homework and it's all done, and I come home with no books. Then my mother says to me, "Where are your books?" And I said, "Well, I got my homework done." And she said, "There's always things to study. You never come home without books." I never came home without a book after that.
Good stuff. So your mom was at home when you got home, huh, Cliff?
Yeah.
Yeah. What if your mom was not at home because she was working a second job? What if she was working a second shift? Right? These are these are the sort of the conditions, the different conditions that kids live under. If you have two parents and both parents are home and available and are going to hold you accountable for doing your homework or for bringing books home, no wonder you were a success, Cliff Krieger, right? No wonder you've gone
Well,
on
I
to
wasn't
great
a
things.
success in high school.
We don't like to pump them up. We gotta keep them.
Well, although I have to admit, I probably had some good teachers in high
There
school.
you go. Now, there's a conversation. The number one determinant of whether students succeed in school is teachers. Absolutely. We have the most terrific teachers that if you have students of any, background or race or poverty or you name it, there are teachers who get past all of that year after year, and those kids are successful. And so we need to look at what is it those teachers are doing and help all of us learn and then have the rest of the students be successful. It happens, and I've seen it at my school. There have been studies on that, Cliff. It's the teacher that makes a difference.
Well, my English teacher in sophomore year, I wasn't doing that well, and she said I could get extra credit if I read a book banned in Boston. So I got Ulysses. I mean, Ulysses is thick.
I think she was just keeping you busy.
She was the cutest teacher I have ever seen.
What would Hester Waldorf think? Your neighbor.
Well, that was before.
Oh, okay.
This was back when women still wore petticoats. And
Okay. Well, all right.
Now most women don't know what a petticoat is.
Yeah, I definitely don't. I'm just going along with it.
They used to have a train and stuff. Uncle Joe was with them and stuff, the Petticoat Junction show, but at that point, I didn't know what a petticoat was.
What is it?
I don't know.
petticoat, it's like a slip, except it's a little more frilly. You wear it under your dress, so your dress comes out a little bit.
Oh, like a Skims. Today they'd call it a Skims.
I don't know. So have you ever read Ulysses?
I have not read Ulysses. I'll try to get to that bit by the time I'm back on the show next time.
Eileen, read this one.
Most households nowadays have no discipline. Kids have it easy nowadays. Someone else cuts their grass, clean their houses, etc. I'll bet mommy still does the laundry for all their 30-year-olds living in their parents' basement. I mean, there's some truth to that. We live in a very lazy society today where, you know, you can get groceries delivered, you can get any food delivered, you can get all of these things, and, you know, kids don't think that they actually have to work for what they have anymore if their parents can even afford those luxury services. So I think we live in a very discrepant society. We say we want to build these strong, resilient children, yet we live in an environment where everything is immediate gratification.
I want to say there's nothing wrong with mom doing your laundry for you. It didn't do me any harm, right? But I think, you know, my response to the person who wrote that text is, I would bet that the person is older, right? Every generation thinks that the kids of the next generation don't have it. We all think that, you know, I know that I feel older I've said this before on this show, you start listening to the music that your kids are listening to, and you decide it's not even music at all. But that's exactly what my parents said about the music that I listened to. And so it's a habit. And so kids are growing up today in a very different environment than we grew up in. And so, sure, they have different habits, and we tend to think that they're lazy, but they also have new pressures that we never had when we were growing up. We didn't have to, contend with cell phones and social media and so on, and all of those things have a big impact on students who are growing up today that we didn't deal with when we were young.
Liam, speaking of cell phones, is there any talk in the community of superintendents of what to do about cell phone addiction?
There is.
Please tell us.
Well, actually, there's so much talk, John, about cell phones in schools that the state, Massachusetts Department of Education, is giving funds to school districts to experiment with different possibilities with cell phones. But the possibilities in the actual cell phones themselves are like taking the phone away. So and it's like you take the phone away when the kid walks in the door, and then give it back to them when they're walking out the door. Or, for instance, at Lowell High School right now, what we've chosen to do is students give their cell phone in as they walk into class. There are crates where they pop the cell phone into individual slots in the crate, and so the kids don't have their cell phones during class. When they're leaving the class, they pick up their cell phone, and they're allowed to use their cell phone in between classes. But these things are definitely, the schools and education departments are very, very big on figuring out what to do about cell phones. Would you believe, even to the extent that some countries have banned cell phones in schools? I believe France is one of them. There are other, like the whole country has decided kids can't have cell phones in schools. They're that damaging and that distracting for students.
Well, to the argument that cell phones are going to be there until the sun burns out. Right now, I can pick up my cell phone and say, how tall was Mickey Mantle? And know instantly, how many times was he married? What, did he paint his fingernails?
Yeah.
Instant information's there. Have you guys, superintendents, generically, men and women, thought about, how can we use this as an aid to our intelligence?
Well, it's a very big field. The answer is no, there's no, I mean, as far as like have all the superintendents plugged together and discussed this and figured out how to use it, not the superintendents groups, but there are studies. There are studies of this thing all over the place, but they do have to do with like how to restrict cell phones in schools, how to help students that are addicted.
I got that partly, but since they're always going to be there, and I don't know how much you use your cell phone, I use my cell phone a lot, and since it knows exactly how tall Mickey Mantle is or whatever human I want to ask a question, what time's this flight going to land, it comes up instantly. I'm just suggesting that you and your colleagues should say, you know what, let's embrace this and work with it.
So there are times where cell phones, and you may not have a cell phone in a classroom, for instance, at Lowell High School, but they have devices. They have laptops, they have Chromebooks and so on, so they have access to all of that information in the classroom, and they are being used. But I think you're hinting at something that's way bigger than superintendents and school departments. You're talking about, artificial intelligence and so on, right? It's making decisions for us, and it's making more and more decisions for us, and at some point we won't be called upon to make decisions about ourselves. If you use, for example, Google Maps or one of those for
Yep.
driving.
Used it earlier this morning, yes.
Right, to get yourself from one destination to another. You're basically telling the cell phone that you trust it to get you from point A to point B. In the past, you would have had to think about what street you're going to drive on, which direction you're going to go, if you take the highway versus take the, you've given that over to the phone now, right? 10 years from now, you'll be asking your phone which neighborhood you think you should live in,
I
what kind of
already
a
do.
new jacket you should buy. You know, we're giving up all our decisions to the cell phone based on artificial intelligence. That's a bigger issue than just for schools. That's a whole society issue.
But can I just
ahead.
interject and say something? I feel like it's almost like the cookie, right? And when to use.
Drag
or
that
when
mic to you.
eat
Drag
it,
that mic to you.
When to eat the cookie and when to use the cell phone. And how do we catch up with where we are in society today, knowing that this is where our kids truly are at? Like, they're immersed in a world of immediate gratification. But how can we teach them to use it effectively and efficiently? And that's what I say all the time. We need to catch up to where our kids are today in the field of education, because you can't fight that. In even the policy subcommittee last week, you know, a cell phone procedure is a procedure, but it was interesting to find there's no mass general laws about that. So if there's no state law, right, in regards to cell phones, then how do you fight against that? And what point do we understand that this is going to be a part of our world? It is a part of our kids' world. And how do we teach them to not be on it all the time, but to use it in an effective, efficient way to learn skills?
I think it's a terrific comment, and I love the fact that you connected the cookie story to the phones, right? Because it is the same principle, having students learn how to be self-disciplined, including be disciplined about how and when they use their phone. Yeah, it's a great comment.
Yeah.
Liam, how are the homeless doing on the South Common? This comment just came in. In 10 years, I'll bet the homeless will still be on the South Common. I mean, you're at the Rogers School across the street, plagued by the homeless issue. How do you think the city's migrating? How do you think the city's doing with that problem?
So I'm the superintendent of schools, John.
Yep.
I don't have a great deal of work or interaction with that particular social.
What does Greg say?
Pardon?
Does Greg, the principal at the school, does he say anything to you about it?
No, the school, the STEM Academy is at South Common, is a terrific operation, by the way, and the principal and the staff have done a terrific job in that school over the last couple of years. I think, John, you've acknowledged that yourself just
I richly agree.
just from
Good
across
guy
the
to
street.
work with, the kids are happy, they're disciplined.
Right.
He's a great principal. Like the guy.
So the issue on South Common with homeless is not a big impediment to the school. Right? Occasionally, they're able to keep students safe. That's number one, of course, right? Students are always with adults and with staff, but it has not been. There's not been a great intersection between that problem on South Common and the school.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have to take this minute to say goodbye. I have to go to my real work. Hey, do teachers have school tomorrow? Or does everybody have off?
Good question. I'm
Teachers
glad,
are-
and very timely. Teachers are in tomorrow.
Yeah.
Students are home, but the teachers are coming in for professional development.
Does it count as one of the 180 days?
It counts as one of the 181 days.
Thank you.
So there's a 1 on there, John, right? It's an extra day. We still have to get 180 days
Are you
with
making
the
believe you're
students.
Cliff? You just like to correct me?
Oh, no. Yeah. Keep me on your...
But no cookies.
No cookies. Yes, that's right. Well, we might be giving the teachers cookies, though.
Mike's looking to pipe in. Go ahead, Mike.
Bye, Eileen. Good to see
I've
you.
just been waiting. I mean, I wanted to let everybody finish their comments, but I sort of wanted to circle back a little bit. Earlier, we were talking about the younger generation and being lazy in that. I don't think that that's necessarily the case, and I understand where Mr. Skinner is coming from. I think it's a twofold thing. It's easy when you're older to say, oh, these young people are lazy, they're not doing this and that. I don't think we should put all the blame on the younger generation. We have to look back at ourselves as parents or grandparents and say, what are we doing to help our younger generation move forward? And understanding what they're going through. Because, as was discussed earlier, they are under a lot of different things, especially social media with cell phones and social media. Has changed the stress level for our younger generation. And we have to help them out give them boundaries and help them learn about consistency. You know, like my son, when he was growing up, there was expectations, but it took work as a parent to make sure that those things happen. And I think nowadays, a lot of parents are so busy in their lives doing so many other different things and running kids back and forth to multiple sports events and piano lessons and all this. They're not taking some time out to help the younger generation understand their stresses and giving them some boundaries and consistency. So we can't just blame our younger generation when we get older. We have to look back at ourselves. What have we done to help them be better? Are we doing what we need to do?
I appreciate that, Mike. I always think that as educators, we have to take responsibility as one of our core dispositions in education, being responsible for how students are. If the students are not behaving, if the students are not learning, we have to take responsibility for that as the adults in the situation, instead of just simply blaming a whole generation of youngsters that it's their fault. We definitely are the ones who are responsible for the conditions under which they're growing up.
Yeah.
Right, Cliff?
That's true. The book that Eileen and I prepped on, the Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother, it's written by a Yale law professor, so you can immediately judge it on Yale. But I would, if it wasn't today, I'd further expand on that. But anyway, Amy Chow, and she talks about how her oldest daughter, how she made sure she practiced the piano, didn't waste time on sleepovers and things like that, made sure she got extra practices in. She would sort of sit there and look for every mistake she made and corrected it, got her the best teachers. She eventually, as a young kid, went to, not to Carnegie Hall, the center, but she went and auditioned in one of the other rooms in Carnegie Hall. And then she talks about her second child, Lulu, who just was a real Lulu. She was very resistant to this, what Amy Chow called the Chinese parents' approach to children. But this created a big ruckus when it came out, 12 years ago. But yet it talks to the parents and their place in making sure children do well. Although I had some questions. For instance, what if your child came in second? I mean, is that going to destroy them for life because they came in second? Amy Chow tells about her going to an award ceremony and inviting her father, and she got second place, and her father said to not bother him with things that weren't important.
Well, if they usually don't ask the co-pilot's name.
Right.
And in NASCAR, the only one that counts is the winner. Mr. Smith, we had discipline in the households. Our parents didn't treat us like a friend. We had to be accountable.
Terrific. So Cliff, one of the things I'm thinking about when you talk about that book is the difference. You talked about this tiger mom.
Yes.
And the kid who did loads of practice and apparently was pretty competitive and ended up being successful. And she had a sister who we're calling Lulu.
Yes.
And who was a Lulu,
Yeah.
right? And so, anyone who's a parent and who has more than one child has to think about the fact that that your two children, or maybe three, let's say, right, grow up in the same household with the same parents and the same, you would imagine, the same influences and the same context, and yet they turn out to be so different from each other, right? And so, when I think about that, I think about teachers in classrooms. Teachers in classrooms have 25, sometimes closer to 30 students at a time, and they're all.
I see where we could save some money.
Right?
When I was in elementary school, we were up at 36.
We could save money, yes, we could, right? We want it, but we are not in the business of saving money. We're in the business of educating students,
Okay.
right? But at any rate, you can imagine the variability. If two kids in a household, same meals, same, mommy and daddy and so forth, and they turn out to be so different from each other, how much more complex is a classroom where you've got 25 to 30 kids, all very different in that same context? But so what makes the Lulu, and what makes that older kid practice as hard as she did in that book? Did they tell you?
Lulu just had a different personality. She's just as competitive. When she decided she wasn't going to play the violin anymore, although she'd done well in playing the violin, she learned a tune for her bat mitzvah and played it flawlessly for her bat mitzvah. You don't have many Chinese kids, but her father is Jewish, so that's why she ended up in the bat mitzvah, even though her mother's not Jewish. I mean, the funniest line I think I've ever heard is the Signed, Sealed, and Delivered TV series, and there's a marriage, and the local bartender is also a minister. He's a jack of all trades. Is setting it all up, and the bride's mother comes in and says, well, let's put up a canopy. And the child of the mother says, well, why? We're not Jewish. And she says, how is that my fault? And I thought, that was funny. But Lulu then turns to tennis and ends up in junior high school on the high school tennis team. So she obviously was a very competitive person. She picked it up from her mother and her father, who's also a law professor. So it was a case of finding the right slot for that child to excel.
Sure. Yeah, we find that that's another sort of good connection with education. We find that all the time, including, for example, students that don't read well or don't want to read, but a kid who is, let's say, he's very into NFL sports, football, right? But is not a good reader. But if sometimes if a teacher can find that kid a book about football, all of a sudden the kid will become a reader because he's really interested in the football, right? And so, yes, the idea that each kid having to find their own niche and then they become really engaged and self-motivated. We see that as well.
I want to...
Got two comments from the audience. First one's directed to Mike. A question for Mike. Bowling has a perfect game. Is there anything like that in bocce? And I got text number 2. It says, the adults are creating most, if not all, the drama in social media. That's what the kiddos see. A bunch of old people on Facebook having childish arguments. When the adults grow up, maybe the children will learn. Back over to you, Cliff, and you can ask Mike if you like.
Okay. So I'll answer the bocce question real quickly, and then I want to add on to what the discussion's going. So in bocce, I would imagine the perfect game is 12-0 shutout. We've had that happen. On a round of bocce is when you score 4 points and the other team scores no points. So those would be more of what they're asking about a perfect game. I just want to add on what we've been discussing is I think the hardest thing for a parent is to realize, based on what you're talking about this book, is that their expectations of what they think the child should do and what the child can do are two different things. And it's really tough for a parent, and I see this in sports, especially because I rush soccer, what the parents, they're living through their kids. And I kind of went through that a little bit, and I had to reevaluate myself. My son, going to college, was studying for a dual degree in physics and mathematics. And the plan was that he was probably going to go on and earn his master's and get a doctorate in physics. And between his junior and senior year, he did research at the Fermi Lab in Chicago. And then when he came back that fall, he says, Dad, I'm not going to do that. And I don't want to go on and get a doctorate in physics or a master's in that. And so that, I had to think about that for a while and say, is this something I want for him or is this something he wants? And we came to the discussion, we said, okay, finish your degree and decide what you want to do. So that was not easy for me as a parent because, I'm looking, if he gets a doctorate in physics, that reflects on me. And so it's tough for parents to realize what they expect and what the child really needs to find to do is hard. And that's where I think that the conflicts come into play.
Okay.
Very interesting, Mike. You think about how many youngsters follow the parent into especially in trades or apprenticeships and so on. If a dad's a plumber and the kid becomes a plumber, if mom's a teacher, the daughter becomes a teacher. That does happen. And you wonder the extent to which parents pressure kids into their own expectations rather than the child's expectations. Yeah, very important.
Yeah, I did that to my youngest son. I challenged him to take the LSATs. And
Now, what, sorry, Cliff.
you're sorry?
That begs.
Yes, you are.
Okay,
The LSAT is the test to get into law school. So we went down to the...
why didn't you say that the first time?
Because I have an expectation that most people probably know what the LSAT is.
I'll
And
bet
it's
you,
shorter.
you and I could go out on Highland Street right now, stop every car. And I bet you
Cliff, I knew what it was.
10
so
out of
you're-
10
you're
would not
okay.
know what LMNOP is. They would not know what that is. That's why I asked you the question.
Well, now we all know, right?
All right. And I embarrassed myself. I beat him by 2 points. But he got a scholarship to go out to University of San Diego de Acala, and he did well, and now you should live in fear of him, because he is the lawyer for the Marshal Service in the area of asset forfeiture. So
Wow.
if they ever pull you over and seize your car,
I'm going
You'll-
to keep your number handy, Cliff, just in case.
But I wanted to talk about, when I'm driving west on French and then Father Morris said, and I look over and I see these two buildings that are gutted. And then I saw an article that said that the contractors were surprised at the asbestos in the 1922 building. How can you be surprised at the asbestos in a 1922 building? I mean, don't we know that there's asbestos?
Right. You're
I
talking about Lowell High School and
Yeah.
the renovation project. Oh, boy, it's a big topic. First off, before you get to the gutted buildings that you're talking
Yeah.
about, we call that the 1922 building. But have you seen the new freshman academies, the brand-new structures? They are marvelous.
Yes.
A new gymnasium, a new 5-story building filled with classrooms with state-of-the-art equipment. It's really wonderful. And yes, new phase of the construction project is to get over to what we call the 1922 building. It's a sort of yellow brick building, and it's been gutted. And as far as the asbestos goes, I gather that these construction companies, when they're vetting the job and they go into the building and they take samples from different places, and most of those samples did not have any asbestos in them. So they figured there wasn't a lot of asbestos used, and there wasn't. But in very particular areas, now that they've gutted the building, so for example, in the auditorium, in some sort of soundproof areas, there's a lot of asbestos in just that particular area. And that was a surprise, given that the various sampling that they did before they started the job, they didn't show asbestos as much.
Of course, most of us are corrupted by our life experience. I can remember my two younger brothers, and this must have been 60 years ago, 55 years ago, but they had a great job working in a warehouse, and their father found out what they were doing and yanked them because they were moving asbestos without safety gear.
Oh, boy.
So this is back in the 60s, and I just would have thought we would have been more aware of asbestos.
Well, the 1922 building
Yeah,
is called that because that's it's vintage, right? And so
Right.
you can imagine that asbestos was used in the construction back before we knew that asbestos is harmful. I will tell you, and it's important, I think, if anybody's viewing this program, the area that where the asbestos was found is completely sealed. The only people who have access to anywhere near that are the workers with the construction workers with the proper equipment for dealing with the asbestos. And it's not throughout. It's really in these very contained areas, and they are contained. They're completely sealed.
so how's the,
Cliff, can I just say a little bit?
please,
A lot of people don't realize with asbestos, because when I worked for Kodak, we used to do some asbestos removal, and, I had to wear the whole suit and stuff like that. But the asbestos is only dangerous when it's called friable, when it's loose or, like similar like insulation, the fibers are loose in the air. Because I remember at my kids' school, they found that the tiles on the floor were asbestos. When they were installed years ago, they weren't dangerous unless they were broken or came apart where the asbestos could get in the air. So, as far as just adding on with Mr. Skinner's comments, it's sealed off. If it's not loose in the air, it's not dangerous.
okay. So the school's on course, on schedule, you think?
Very much so. It's really remarkable to see a high school being renovated and rebuilt as the students are in classes. But it's been well planned, and it's worked to plan so far. We're into phase 3. There are 4 phases of the project. We're into phase 3. Phases 1 and 2 have worked very smoothly. That issue that you commented about, the asbestos, was in this sound area, sound tiles or soundproofing of the auditorium. That will delay the auditorium, and so they're going to put that on a separate schedule. It'll delay the opening of the auditorium for 1 year. It won't be open next year. It'll be open the year after. That's a disappointment, but it's understandable. But the project has worked very well. You may see that the building that's gutted, it's one side of it. I believe it's the south side. Excuse me. I think it's the north side of that building, that 1922 building, that's been gutted. But you'll notice new windows being put in, windows that match the style of the windows back in those days. Really, really nice work. Most of those windows right now don't have the finish around them, but there's one that's been as a display that has all the finish around it. It's really, really stylish, very nice work.
Given that this is a pretty expensive project, are we going to have money to take care of the next school that needs to be renovated?
Yes, we are.
Okay,
We are, because we're getting back from the state a large reimbursement of the funds we're putting into it. I believe it's 80% of the money for the high school is being funded by the state.
a texter says, so now that they've gutted the building, they found out the asbestos wasn't as bad as they thought it was. Does that mean we're able to save money on that part of the construction? And then the next one, great show today. Who brought the donuts? There were no donuts today, sadly. Liam, we're running out of time here today. Is there anything you want to make sure the audience knows about?
Wow, thank you, John. I want people to know that we are working very hard on school improvement and on improving Lowell Public Schools, and that work takes time. It takes sustainable work over time, and it takes what we call a culture of continuous improvement. And so we could spend a whole show talking about a culture of continuous improvement, but it includes certain dispositions. I'll give you one for the sake of it. One of them is what we call a growth mindset. We adults have to believe that students can learn, and that back in the days, Cliff is watching me here for my comment, and John, you too, and even Liam, the guy who's speaking, we grew up and went to school in a time where the teachers thought that certain kids were A students and other kids are B students. Now, if you came from a farm like I did, and you milked the cows, but you didn't do a lot of reading, well, maybe you were a C student, and that's okay. We used to say you can be educated to the extent of your ability. And then if that was getting a C grade, that was sufficient. Well, that stuff, that mindset is gone. We now know that kids aren't A, B, and C capable. All students, with the very rank exception of some students who have brain disabilities, right, brain dysfunctions, which is very rare, students can learn, and we need to provide the conditions for them to learn. It's what we call a growth mindset. And teachers and adults and principals and superintendents who have that mindset get better results. You get kids who come from some of those poverty situations that we talk about, and you bring them into school, and you do not think, oh, this kid's coming from a poor home, probably a C student. What you think is, this kid is coming from a poor home, not read a lot. I'm going to work hard to get this child to be a good reader. I'm going to pay attention to what this kid is interested in outside of school, and I'm going to find some great books for this kid in the same theme as his area of interest. And then you get that child reading, and you pay attention to them. This growth mindset is key in communities that have a lot of poverty and a lot of difficult situations where the kids still thrive. So that's one of our great mindsets. And there are others. And when I come in here, John and Cliff, I'll talk to you, and each time I'll review another one with you, and I'll take questions on them.
Okay.
Okay, time is short, so always great to have Mr. Skinner in as a guest. Thanks for getting up early. And tomorrow, City Life, we're going to have Bob Hubbard's going to be here. Tom Bomo's going to be here. And maybe Ned Tommy's coming back tomorrow. He's going to see how strong he is to come back tomorrow. And then Lee Gitchie is coming in too. Thanks for your patience. Back to you guys. Time is short.
The flip side of what you said reminded me, I know a fellow who spent some time as an Army recruiter commanding a recruiting organization, and he said you could tell how the soldier was going to do, the recruit was going to do, by walking in the house and with their magazines on the table, with their books in the bookcase. And if that was the case, that kid was going to do well.
That's unfortunate, Cliff.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. I'll tell you why. That's the old mindset. If you see magazines on the table, you know there's reading in that house and the kid is going to be successful. That recruiter brought kids in maybe and treated them as if they knew they were going to be successful, or treated other kids that they knew automatically were not going to be successful. If you treat people in a way that you know from the get-go that they're not going to be successful, then they won't be. And so if that recruiter saw magazines in the house and he said, oh, I know this kid is going to be successful, if he had a different mindset, if he found kids where they didn't have magazines and he said, I know we're going to need to give this recruit a little bit more support, he would have found that other kids would have been just as successful.
Well, that's what the Army is doing now. They up their recruit by, I think, 18,000.
Great.
But it's not just your house. I know that I would go to the house behind us, and they had the New Yorker on the table in front of the couch.
5 seconds.
So I would read the New Yorker as a young kid.
Thanks for watching. We'll
Good
see you
being here.
tomorrow.
Thank you, John. Cliff.
Well, I had more questions, but next time, you know how it is. The producer likes to get in a few thoughts.
Yeah, Mr. Skinner, thank you again. It was another interesting conversation. Hopefully some of my input was valuable. I hope it was. So.
Very much so. It helps us to manage Cliff. So thanks a lot, Mike.
Now, on a sadder note, Cliff, I hate to tell you, I did some research while I was listening.